Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the main event's look at the Champions League of 02-03 as part of its wider history. I'm Martin, your host, as always. And as always, I'm joined by my two friends and colleagues. Adam, how are we doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm actually never thought I would say this, but I'm sad to see the second group stage go.
It's been a revision in my mind that's been there also. Davey, how are we doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to check in that you two boys were all right, because I know that you've got tattoos now saying second group stage BFF. But no, you're right. I think, again, it had lodged in my brain, certainly, as they tried this and it didn't work. Well, maybe bits, but maybe the first stage was damaged by it, but the second wasn't. And we're just about to prove it here, because even when we mention some of these groups, they are mouth-watering. I mean, they are sensational.
They are. We're going to move to just straight into the last 16 next time. But yeah, let's start with Group A then, Adam. Barca and Inter, the heavy hitters. Bayer Leverkusen are there, of course, finalists just there. Newcastle, the team with momentum after that incredible finish to the first group phase. Again, it's Barcelona. We talked last week about them just being able to enjoy the Champions League away from their travails domestically, and they kind of cruise through with 16 points and Inter 2, Newcastle 7, Bayer Leverkusen have 0 points, and maybe this is where it kind of fell apart. This looks good on paper, but starting to become less competitive, I suppose, because someone is getting an absolute shoeing, and they're usually big teams.
Yeah, I guess you prefer that, don't you? Or I do anyway. You want to see the big teams play against each other, and we do see that in the Champions League now. But it's always more fun when a big team gets a kick in. You think Barcelona in the last few years getting doings off PSG, wasn't it, and Bayern maybe as well, and that part of it's fun. Less so watching big teams. Yeah, big teams battering Rangers. Yeah, I was just about to say that. In the group stage. I guess what I'm saying is, if somebody has to get a doing, I would rather it wasn't us. I'd rather it was somebody that doesn't often
I
get a
think we
doing.
would all echo that.
But yeah, I mean, Group B and Group D are tight. Group D is very tight. But yeah, there's a big disparity. Certainly this group, 100%. And then even in Group C, you can see poor little Lokomotiv Moscow, which we'll come on to. So yeah, I can understand it. Barcelona terrific in this one. Just two goals conceded. Taken
so different to them domestically that season, where they were in absolute shambles at the back.
Absolutely. Just right in the whole Dutch moment, as we've said here, but they take Barcelona apart at the Nou Camp. It's 3 going on 13, I think. At one point, Sholami will be with a wee consolation. But yeah, they're just very, very, very good at this point. And Leverkusen, I know we spoke about them last week, obviously. A team like that who come out of a couple of years of decent success, but relatively nowhere, and then get their best players picked off by not a very good Bayern Munich, has to sting. And I think we see that in this year's Roberto and Michael Ballack going to Bayern, who don't have the best season themselves, but they certainly.
They need to make that statement, don't they? They raid every year. They raid where they need to raid. Yeah, I mean, Bayern taking care of Inter handily. Adam, for example, in the middle of those games. I guess the other notable thing, Davey, I mean, it does come down to the last game. Newcastle need to beat Barcelona at St James's and hope that Inter don't win. In Leverkusen, they do, of course, because Leverkusen are absolutely manky by that point. But a Champions League hat-trick for Alan Shearer. At home to Leverkusen, and he followed that up with a couple in the San Siro the following
He
week
did.
because the Newcastle drew 2-2 in Milan. But it's what his career kind of missed. We slightly disagree on the overview of Alan Shearer's career. If he'd gone to United, I think he would have a hell of a lot more Champions League goals, obviously a hell of a lot more medals, but at least there was something there because he was genuinely one of the greatest strikers of his generation and just briefly glances this tournament.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. See, when I talk about that, and I'm like, I understand why he did it, and I'm sure he doesn't regret it. But it's tantalising for us to imagine what
He
he
doesn't
would have been
regret
like at
but yeah,
United. No, he doesn't. But it is for us. I think we're entitled to be, because here's just a little, because he's not at his best at this stage. He's still very good, but this is not the Shearer of 4 or 5 years before. And if he'd been at United in that period, he would have been playing the Champions League every season. The experience would have grown. The achievements potentially that he could have made. And by this stage, we've been talking about this. I think now we can comfortably say this is the testing ground. Everyone now has admitted this, that this is where the big boys are playing. And yeah, he gets those 5 goals in the second group stage. It's high level competition, but it is just a tournament that when I think Alan Shearer, I don't think Champions League. And that's a shame. And because of that, to our generation, we talk about Shearer with this kind of hush reverence. I do wonder if in 20 or 30 years that will be the case. Whereas there are guys who, because of doing it in this tournament, will have that. Yeah, they need to win the last game, but you mentioned there that they need Bayer to take something against Inter. Now, Barca are already through, but Bayer have no points at this point. Spoiler alert, they have no points after this. And when Kluivert puts Barca ahead, the gloom, because they know that Inter are winning, so the gloom sort of descends. They gave it a good go, because I kind of agreed with Adam last week. It's not a great squad. They have good players in it. But you look at some of the goal scorers, Shola Amiobi, he was all right. He was never brilliant. Lomana Lualua, who struck me as more of a sort of... Yeah, he was more of a sort of Mr. Wu type than a consistent player. He was like, you would have him on the showboat on Soccer AM at this point a lot, but he didn't score a lot of goals. And it was a sort of weirdly uneven squad. But, it's a respectable showing in a group like that. I would say 7 points, taking it to the last game. It's a respectable showing going out to Barca and Inter. Again, it's luck of the draw, because there are a couple of groups, as Adam's already mentioned, where they probably would have done enough to get through. But I just find the contrast between Barca domestic. Honestly, listeners, please go and check out Barca 2002, 2003 La Liga form. They were getting, really poor La Liga sides were putting 3 and 4 by them, and then they go in and they're up against an Inter attack that contains Christian Vieira and an absolutely on fire Hernan Crespo, and dealing with them quite handily. There must be something psychological in that, because otherwise it just doesn't compute that it's ability.
Adam, we'll take that other group that you mentioned, the one with Lokomotiv at the bottom, Milan and Real Madrid going through in the top. It looks close with Dortmund just a point behind. Again, Dortmund needed a bit of a miracle, I think, to get through. And it's a group with maybe just, again, going through the motions a wee bit. Milan and Real Madrid trading blows, home wins, and doing what they need to do. Again, don't want to talk too much about Milan, because they're also going to be the focus of next week's show. But the goal scorers, they're sharing it around. Sheva's there, Inzaghi's there. Rivaldo and John Dal Thomason can come off and do things as well. They just seem to have that spread of goals behind, or in front of, rather, quite a rock solid kind of foundation.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe one of those points that you could track back to that Liverpool team that we just spoke about, where Milan don't have any natural width here. But what they do have is a clear idea of what they want to do with that. They've got no natural win for a reason. They want to put in as many players, as many of their good players as they can. They're absolutely blessed with. They've got Ibrahim Ba, but let's be honest. When you've got guys like Pirlo, Gattuso, Rui Costa, Seedorf, Ambrosini, and Redondo, you can't blame. And it's Ancelotti. It's the master of getting his best players in to play in the right way. So you get 5 or 6 midfielders there that are going to get into pretty much every team in Europe. Play as many of them as you can. It just makes sense when you marry up to Ancelotti, and especially when you've mentioned that you've got those goal scorers up front that are just going to make a difference. We spoke about Inzaghi. I guess we could speak about him now. He does score so many goals. It's an interesting one because he scores a lot of goals. I'm not sure I would have him as a aesthetically good finisher, in the sense of like precision or precise goals or worldies. It is all goals bundled in 2 or 3 yards out. He excels more in his movement, his ability to attract defenders, ghost away from them, and then bundle the ball in the back of the net. You watch so many of these goals, and he's the first to react, or the ball just magically falls to him, which is obviously not just magically. Yeah,
he didn't care about how it looked. He was a volume guy, and I think you mentioned it about Van Nistelrooy last week, Adam. It's the same thing, that there may be different type of strikers coming in the next few years as we discuss them here. But these guys were just, as soon as the ball was going into the box, they would leave top defenders and just create themselves a yard, and they had teammates who knew. I mean, Martin, I know that one of your pet hates is put it into a good area, and that is, I think, in most cases true. Inzaghi and Van Nistelrooy are 2 guys you could do that with.
My pet hate is if you, I don't mind.
If you don't have them.
I don't mind if you're put into an area where you know that you have a gambling forward. You have someone who has just instinct, who you know is going to be there. So it isn't a hit and hope. It's actually, you know what you're doing. You maybe can't see them, but you know they'll be there. That's different from fullbacks getting to position A1, swinging their foot and say, well, I did my job. It was a great ball. You see how technically brilliant I said that? And there's no fucker there. It's no real. You don't get much these days. You obviously get to the byline and cut back for someone standing acres of space just to tap it in. Those teams that do that, nice to see. But yeah, absolutely. Inzaghi's just.
He's just electric in the box. It's the movement, it's the half yard, it's the taking a defender to the front post and spinning off to the back. And as Adam said, he just was brilliant at being there and reacting first in that split second ahead. And I do think there are similarities. Wasn't there the famous stat about Van Nistelrooy that he scored something like 100 goals before he got one from outside the box? Because that's where he got his goals. And it is something that I wang on about, and I know that it maybe is a bit boring, but I do like strikers who get to the front post, because if you get there first ahead of, and you have someone who can deliver the ball to you, but you look at the midfielders that Adam just named that are playing in that Milan side, if he gets a half a yard in the box, he will get the ball, and therefore he will be in a position to finish.
But this is what I'm looking forward to, kind of picking Adam's brains about a few years hence, because as I said last week, Van Nistelrooy and Inzaghi, they're very quickly endangered species. They're very quickly extinct, and you have front threes, you have forward lines that are full of movement, and you don't know where they're going to be, and defenders can't quite cope with that because Ruud's just hanging about, and people hanging about in the box now. They're excellent at sniffing out that space, but that space starts to just become, I'm guessing, I have no idea, but it just starts to become just better defended, and you don't have that, so you've got to think a wee bit differently, and you need to move defenders around, I suppose. Adam, Group B, Jesus wept. Valencia, Ajax, Arsenal, and Roma, or as David insists, we must say Rome, because that's the English version of the name.
No, this is the English version of City. The club is called Roma, so get it up, yeah. and the fact that you haven't called them when they've been on the show IFK Göteborg suggests that you are just picking and choosing. So no.
I'm pretty sure I said Göteborg earlier, but
See, if you did say Göteborg, I would have mocked you mercilessly.
Rome and Naples and Turin and all the lads all
the
together.
clubs are called differently, right? And it's Ajax. By
Just
the
said
way.
it. Just the cleaner.
Ron said that.
But Arsenal, they win in Rome, or Roma as it's called, and a Thierry Henry hat-trick, I think, and they're unbeaten for the next 4 Champions League games. Sadly, though, those 4 games are draws, and they go to Valencia, they go to Mestalla, need not to lose, and that's a hard task, as teams have found. They do find it hard because Valencia beat them a big John Carew double, and they go out in the narrowest of margins. Ajax pip them. They get a point in Rome, and it's just incredible. It's just this is the kind of group, I suppose, you're looking for 4 of these.
Yeah, that would be. I think we'd probably still see the second group stage if it was like this, because it is end to end, all action, whatever other superlatives you wanna put against it. It is one of the better second round group stages that I can remember. Definitely, I think the big thing for Arsenal this year, certainly for me, was Gilberto Silva coming in. I think because we spoke a little bit about what they were a couple of years before with Petit being there, and some pretty ropey transfers in summer 2002, Van Bronckhorst and Sol Campbell aside, but 2002 you're starting to see, okay, well, Gilberto Silva comes in, and then the year after, which is obviously the invincible season, they make great signings that will go in and be there for the next 10, 15 years. But yeah, they still just leave me wanting for more. I feel like as much as we talk about Arsene Wenger and we talk about what he did for the club and brought them into the modern times and all that sort of stuff, at the European level, the tactics, I guess, are just quite basic. I think it's not necessarily a kind of Bobby Robson Newcastle type gung ho thing, but there's just a little bit defenders defending, which is absolutely fine right now. But as you said, that's going to need to change quite quickly, and struggle with it a little bit. I don't think they ever quite get the midfield balance right. As we said there with Fabregas coming in, that helps, but it's never quite right. And even at this stage, you've still got Henry and Bergkamp up front, absolutely terrific. And Henry is on fire at this point, and Bergkamp is Bergkamp, but Bergkamp couldn't go to half the games because he was that scared of flying. It's just it's these little small time things, for want of another phrase, that it's just a little bit rudimentary, I think, at times. And I think that's maybe their detriment in Europe, as great as they are at this point, and as great as, or as invincible as they will come on to be the year after. There is just a little bit of a little boy in the headlights thing. You could probably make some sort of comparison back to Man United 95-ish, 96, that they're kind of just here, and you're thinking they need to go up another couple of levels to really be at this level.
I go back to my well-worn theory that so much of football psychology was enshrined in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and Arsenal are a big club in England. They feel they should win the Premier League title every so often, in a way that Manchester United think they should win the European Cup. And I don't think Arsenal ever believed they should win the Champions League. They should win the European Cup, because they just simply don't have that history to kind of fall back on. And clearly, we know who football and royalty is here, and they just have a sense, even if they are shite, if they utter dog shit at home and they're having a dreadful season, it's a Champions League and this is ours, and we can still kind of raise the game. And I never thought that Arsenal had that. Go on, you go,
I think the team, I think you're spot on. They don't have it in their DNA. As we record this show in 2024, Arsenal, I think I've tipped Arsenal to win the league, and part of it is I think City will be wanting the European Cup, whereas Arsenal as a club won't give a toss really if they go out early because they can concentrate on winning the league. So I think the DNA argument is very true. The other thing though is, as Adam said, this is a bit of a kind of they don't have that little X factor. Now that sounds odd about a team with Thierry Henry in Europe, but Thierry Henry, you knew what you were getting. He was going to be Thierry Henry, and you could either stop him or you couldn't. Right? But in games where they were able to stop, more the supply to him than anything else, because as Adam said, that they worked in silos, that team in Europe. The defenders defended, the midfield were in the middle of the park, and the forwards were there to get goals. They didn't quite have the sort of X factor player that could make a difference in that. And I think that a couple of years later when they're getting there, I think it's Pires, who's that guy, who gives them that little extra bit of oomph. But yeah, it was a lot of draws, and I felt the one that when they were at home and Highbury was going absolutely mental in the second game against Valencia, and Valencia go down to 10 with 25 minutes to go, and they don't get a winner. That's getting it. And of course, had they got the winner, they would have gone through. But it was just that, like, Man United at this time would have got the winner in that game. Liverpool even would have got the winner in that game. They didn't, and it's so strange. But Adam sort of alluded to it. Maybe the tactics just weren't right for it, and it's a club who historically do not perform at their domestic level in Europe.
Yeah.
I think you could probably speak to what we spoke about last week as well a little bit with Koeman and Advocat to an extent. When you look at some of these teams, certainly in Europe for Arsenal, it was relying on your good players being good, and then there was a bit of ropiness in other areas. I mean, that Valencia game, that in the second group stage here, there's Pascal Sigan is playing. Taylor's and goals, and you've got Ljungberg on one side, which is great, and you mentioned Pires as well. Great players, ball players, but physicality or pace, the extra oomph that you need at this level, you're looking at maybe, I don't know, Vieira, Sol Campbell, Thierry Henry, and that's kind of it. I think from the three there that have the
and interestingly, Adam, he then goes the other. He doesn't look at that and say, right,
so
he goes so far that what I'll do is I'll make it even more technical, and I'll get loads of smaller technical players, and
that's the on winning everything with a team full of people.
He becomes so stubborn that and it's that 2006 point.
Who was the striker they got from Croatia? The one that got the terrible leg break, Eduardo, yeah. Again, another 5'8", quick, technically excellent player, and it's almost like he took the wrong lesson from this.
He absolutely did. Anyway, that's in the future. Valencia won, Ajax were second, Arsenal, and then Roma 9-8, 7 and 5 points. It was tight. So was Group D, as you mentioned. Not the top. Manchester United rocketing through, slapping Juve about, beat them at home, beat them 3-0 away. We know what's going to happen with Juve, obviously. United absolutely rocking. Juventus just about doing it, even though they lost in Switzerland. It didn't really matter, mainly because big Igor Tudor popping up with a 93rd minute winner against Deportivo in the second last game. They're through, but there's a wee bit spawniness about them, not quite the full package quite yet, Adam.
No, very, very Juventus-y, I guess you could say. Theme of what David's been mentioning here, Juventus team that scores 11 and concedes 11, quite rare for them as well. And I guess that sort of shows where they are at this point. I know we spoke about Nedvěd at the tail end of the season before, and I said I wasn't sure over the piece at Juventus he was really as good as he was at Lazio. I'd completely forgotten how great he was this year. And he wins Ballon d'Or at the end of this calendar year. He was terrific and probably plays quite a big part for them this year in terms of where they get to. Marcelo Zalayeta as well was a player who popped up with a couple of important goals for them at certain points of this Champions League phase, but wouldn't be one that would really go on and do much. But yeah, in the absence of Salas catching fire, I guess Nedvěd certainly for me was one of their best players this season, and it's a shame he never really goes on to replicate it for them.
The quarterfinals, then. I know people like underdogs. I know people like shock teams, hipster choices, Atalanta, and all that junk. This is it. The only shock team I want to see is Rangers. If it's not them, then this is the kind of quarterfinal lineup we're talking about. Real Madrid against Manchester United, Juve against Barcelona, Ajax, Milan as a nice throwback from 10 years before or whatever, and Inter, Valencia. This is big dogs, overdogs. There's no filler in here, Adam. It's all killer. Let's start with the Ajax Milan one, actually. 0-0 in Amsterdam in the first leg, as all first legs should be. And the game in the San Siro is just joyous. Inzaghi scores and Inzaghi goes a brilliant header. Litmanen then gives Ajax the equaliser and that away goal. Inzaghi at the heart of the Milan second, and Shevchenko's the one that just kind of nods it in. This is 2 minutes after Litmanen scored. And then Steven Pienaar, Costa Curta's not the best, or Maldini actually. It's a bit of a weakness actually there, but he manages to kind of bundle it home. This is 12 minutes to go, 10, 12 minutes to go. Ajax have got the away goal, 2-2, into injury time. And again, it's Inzaghi. John Dal Thomason's, I think, credited with the goal. He must score on the line. I know strikers don't take chances. Who knows who could be coming behind you or whatever else. But it's all Inzaghi. It's a thrilling second leg. Again, everything you want a top elite level quarterfinal to be.
Yeah, and I think this was one of the points that I really seen the value in the away goals because of how important they were. I think, or they would go on to be in this one. Inzaghi maybe flies in the face a little bit of just what we've been saying, because for that second goal, his ability beating his man and getting to the ball and going past it and putting it on a plate for Shevchenko, I think was really useful. Probably a little bit cheeky from Thomason, I think, to take that one when he's done so well.
He does seem a bit of a prick, Thomason, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to do the hard parts of it. I think maybe, if memory serves me correctly, that might have done Inzaghi out of the top goal scorer.
Oh, it must have, because he's got loads of them.
Van Nistelrooy got it, but I think he must maybe they'd have been joint on it, which I'm sure he's not overly fussed about, but maybe he is.
Oh, I think he probably is.
Maybe he is, but yeah, just a bit of a barnstorming one. I do like those, like you said, the tentative first game. I think we've seen a bit of those on the run to Seville for us. There's just an element of just feeling a team out, and then you bring them back to your bit and see what they're really made of. And I think that's great. Again, just really good times to get a goal. Shevchenko's one that we mentioned there is just an excellent pegging back a couple of minutes after Litmanen still on his homecoming Ajax tour, giving them that goal. So yeah, it had it all. I like a 3-2 where it swings, and then obviously the away goals part, as I said, added a little bit of spice to it. Considering, like you said, yeah, right in the injury time, and Milan are well out until that pops up.
Yeah, they're gone. They're done, and that's cup football. Davey, will stick with one of the other Italian sides, who were also guessing a wee bit of bother or needed extra time. That was Juve, 1-1 in Turin against Barcelona. Saviola getting a vital equaliser for Barca, an away goal, blah, blah, blah. Nedvěd, who we've talked about, I'm sure we'll talk about next week as well, cancels that away goal out in the Nou Camp, but Xavi, again, relatively quickly gets it back. It's an extra time winner by Zalayeta. And they're just fighting. They're fighting all the way. They could have gone out in the groups, but they're a tournament team, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pressure that comes with the away goals that as Adam mentioned, you see the desolation in the Barcelona players when Zalayeta scores because they know that they need two in a quarter of an hour. So it completely changes the equation for them. He was a kind of not quite Zalayeta. The ability was there. A couple of early injuries and never really amounted to what I think it had been felt that he could be. But an absolutely vital goal. This was tight. This match, the whole affair was tight. Two sides who you both mentioned there. You like a first leg that's tentative. Well, you would have liked a second leg because both sides very respectful of the other, understandably so. And yeah, just that mentality that Juve possess in every tournament they play until they get to the final of the Champions League. That's the only place where their incredible ability to, as a club, get themselves over the line seems to go out the window.
And tight games. Let's stick with that then. Adam, Inter and Valencia. Just the one goal in the first leg in Milan. It's Vieira, and he pops up very quickly in the Mestalla with that vital away goal. Valencia get two back. It's 2-2 obviously on aggregate, but Inter have got that bit of tastiness, a couple of sendings off at the same time, and it wouldn't be the last time I don't think that Inter and Valencia would have a bit of a tete-a-tete on the pitch. But this again is just gritty and cup tie really, with it not like the Ajax Milan one. It's just tense pretty much all the way through.
Yeah, I think like we said, Vieira popping up with some really important goals here. Inter and Valencia sort of merged into one for me. Round about this point, they just seem like they're swapping players, and they are quite similar. I guess it's not a surprise when Cooper was in charge of both. Round about this time. Yeah, quite stuffy. More like your kind of football, I would say, than that nonsense with all the goals and stuff. But yeah, I think this Inter team is all about those two forwards, really. I mean, the defence has got Coco there, as you mentioned. It's Javier Zanetti. Cordoba was a South Inter are always good for a South American. Walter Samuel, even Cordoba, Lucio kicking about, but Materazzi's here as well at this point. They've also got Zanetti's brother in there as well. Must have been a buy one get one free at this point, because I mean he was all right. Was it Cristiano Zanetti? So I can't remember what his name was. He's fine, but it's very much in the Baggio versus Baggio category from 10 years before. Nice to have you here, but no thank you. So yeah, like I said, they are really similar. Centre midfielders are functional. They do a decent job. They've got a winger or two each, and they've got a good solid defence and a bit of firepower. So I guess in that respect, it's maybe not a surprise that they sort of cancel each other out a little bit, and ultimately it's Valencia that end up going through. So Inter, sorry, end up going through. Yeah, I'm even getting them confused. That's how similar they were. Yeah, maybe not a surprise that it was one of the stuffier games, but still two very decent teams. Yeah.
Goals. If goals is what you want, then Real Madrid versus Manchester United is it. Now, again, Davey, United are or have been in good shape. We've talked about that. They've looked really, really good, really, really settled. Arsenal put them out the cup at Old Trafford. Alex Ferguson kicks a boot into the face of one of his best players, which obviously cuts him just above the eye. There's that whole media circus around that, and there's a wobble. They'll maintain the league form to the end of the season, but the argument to this is, I guess, the CD team, they won their group. Real Madrid did not, and Madrid are 3 up before 50 minutes. Figo, a delightful hanging shot right into the top corner. Raul, nice to see him back involved as well, just doing kind of Raul things. Van Nistelrooy grabs one back, so going to Old Trafford needing to win 2-0 or whatever, which not exactly unreasonable, Davey. And then the big man, who we've not talked about on this show. Can't think Adam will know just how he was doing in La Liga at the time. Hasn't really popped up on this Champions League run, to be honest. And he certainly pops up that night at Old Trafford.
Oh my God. I actually did think the Van Nistelrooy goal in the first leg might end up being important, because 2-0 even.
Sorry, David, you watch the Old Trafford game back, it is electric, right? United fans, they're used to this kind of thing. Van Nistelrooy nearly rips Casillas' hands straight off his wrists with a shot from about 7 yards, just an acute angle. Looks like he's going to cut it back, but he just tries to sledgehammer it into the roof of the net. I mean, United are absolutely at it, and it's just that ball beyond Stam. And it's one of those, is he going to take a shot? Well, yeah.
Yes. Oh, aye, he has. This is just a virtuoso performance. Sometimes you're in the presence of greatness, and this is famously the one that they applaud him off the park when he gets substituted. And I know that some people don't. I wouldn't do it to an opposition player, to be honest, but that's because I'm a miserable bastard with a black soulless void where my heart should be. But if fans said they did it in an involuntary sense, I could understand why, because he was absolutely electric. This was, the Ronaldo of Barcelona days, just rampage and scoring from incredible. I don't even need to describe these goals because our listeners know them. How often have you seen these goals? It's a phenomenal performance against a good defence. Ferguson had left Beckham on the bench for this one, and that had caused a bit of a.
The cameras are on him constantly.
And Beckham comes off the bench in the second half. Of course, he gets too late on, although it's too late by then because they would still need another two because of the away goals. But it's a corking game. United come back in it. They get the equaliser just before half time. And again, I didn't think they were out at this point, Martin. I really did think, okay, well, maybe extra time. But
they're going to need to win 4-1, though.
No, but I can see them winning 3-1 and taking it to extra time, right? So I didn't think they were out at half time. Second half starts, but then that 10-minute spell that Ronaldo has, in which he just takes the tie away from them, and the goals are sublime. He's won that World Cup at last. He's at Real Madrid. He's relaxed now, and he just puts this performance in that is utterly. And then Beckham comes off the bench and pretty much single-handedly wins the game. Talk about a guy coming off the bench with something to prove, and it gets forgotten about, understandably. But this was a real drama I felt we were witnessing. Between these two, a real getting played out in public, which was not like it was not like Ferguson. But then again, Beckham's fame was such that it would be impossible to. Everything he did. I remember the thing about his haircut that they felt like, because Beckham was going to unveil his new haircut, and Ferguson's like, "Will you fuck? You're playing tomorrow," and he wore a hat while he was on the bench for it, so that his haircut. It was a wild time and a wild sort of level of celebrity. But this is the Ronaldo game. He was just incredible, and as famously, as he's coming off, as he's being substituted, Old Trafford applauds him, because it was just watching one of the greatest players who ever kicked the ball at his absolute zenith.
Adam, the two strikes, the first and the third, are brilliant, obviously, but the second goal is just a great team move. I think Real Madrid had a lot of pressure at that time. It was kind of coming. It's a simple finish from Ronaldo, but and as an actual team move, it was just superb. United were just battered.
Yeah, I really hate watching these back a bit more. Not watching this game back, it's great, but watching it back a little more analytically, because the first one I'm thinking, can Barthez do something?
Oh, definitely. Today, if that happened in the Premier League just this afternoon, we would no Ronaldo. Davey, what do you think of this? Ronaldo would not get the credit for that, because all you would hear, keeper has to do better. No one is allowed to score a goal now without it being the goalkeeper's fault.
No, and I think that keepers are better now, and I think the expectation level has gone up. At the time, I don't. This is going to sound weird. Right now, I'd probably think an elite goalkeeper should do better. 20 years ago, and I was never fully convinced Barthez was an elite goalkeeper, if I'm being totally honest. I know he won a lot and played at big clubs, but I think, as you mentioned, Martin, the difference between him and, say, Van de Sar,
Yeah,
when he
Ferguson loved him, but at this moment, I think he'd a lot maybe still going on at home, and his mind wasn't quite.
He had but it's the way he takes it, though. That's so incredibly clever. It's so early. I mean, this is a guy to have the awareness to do it, the vision to try it, and then the ability to execute it. It's De Bruyne-esque. That's the kind of thing he does. But I think I think now, if that goes past Ederson or Courtois, we are probably looking at the keeper. But back then,
And even modern day, the third goal, there'll be somebody saying, "Well, it's in the middle of the goal," but that takes nothing away from how great that one was. But the second, absolutely, it's like a PlayStation goal. You see Zidane picking that ball up and Roberto Carlos making that run. You sort of see it happening in slow motion, and there's no way to stop it. And Zidane, just the perfect ball through the United defence, have no idea what's happening. Roberto Carlos is through like an absolute steam train, and then it is one of those FIFA goals where it's just a nice little cut back and finish. But yeah, watching that goal back, it's just Zidane picks the ball up and you just see him make his run, and you're thinking that is just so perfect that he's just going to thread that ball through, and it's beautiful. So yeah, I think all three of the goals are terrific. But I think the second one, it's the team aspect of it. It's the simplest finish for Ronaldo, but the team aspect of it is what makes it, definitely.
Martin's right about the spell in which these two goals came. That this was not individual moves. This was a 15-minute period that culminates in these two games straight from half time, when Real Madrid are whizzing the ball about Manchester United, who are spinning because they're not used to this. Obviously, in England at the time, they may lose certain games because teams get in their faces, or there's a lot of muscle, but they can't get the ball. And Real Madrid are PlayStation's a description. It's just boom, 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 boom. They're knocking on the door constantly in this period. The fact they only got two is probably the only thing in United's favour that you could say, but it was more through luck than judgment. I would say United only got through, conceding two. It was a sublime 20-minute spell of football.
Beckham, they conceded obviously in the middle of it. Higuera, 2 minutes later, United have equalised an own goal. Yeah, but they don't seem bothered by it, David, because I don't think they've been bothered since the 12th minute of this game. I disagree. Once Ronaldo scores that, this is over. This contest.
I said I felt I was wrong.
Yeah, no, but I think from what I can remember, I thought it was done. I bought into they could win 2-0 and it could be one of those Old Trafford nights, but I think the tie's done. It's 4-3. Beckham hits. I don't know if he's hit a harder free kick, by the way, in his career. He was fucking furious. I think that's fair to say. I'm pretty sure Zidane grabs him at the end and basically asks him to sign for Madrid, which of course he does.
But do they not need context? Context-wise, though, do they not need, what is that at that point when the Ronaldo goal goes in?
Well, they need to win 3-1 just to go to extra time. So they need to beat Real Madrid 4-1 in 120 minutes, to 90 minutes.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. And for some great goals and big scoreline, and it's still talked about as a classic. Contest is over just after 10 minutes.
And it's definitely over after 50.
Yes, that's for sure.
When the second, that's why you mentioned there, they don't look bothered. When Higuera, they're not. They know, and they also know, by the way, that they're going to score again because they're all over them.
So it goes to 6-3, 6-3 to Madrid.
United get a couple back. Yeah, United get a couple back. And listen, I think that United deserve credit for hanging in the face of this hurricane, but I'm sure that there'll be a United fan somewhere who go, well, we won the game. Yeah, but they've got the cigars out after an hour. They take Ronaldo off. They know, and it's Beckham who's coming on. The rest of his teammates' body language, they know he gets a couple of goals. One of which, by the way, is an absolute peach. that Beckham scores in this, but that's more of a. Can you score a goal in an angry way? He scores.
So I
two
mean,
angry
I think it's the
goals.
hardest free. I mean, he's very precise. He scored tons of free kicks, but I think it's the hardest
Yeah.
free kick I think I've ever
And
played.
he's
Just out of
and he's
sheer
not booting.
rage.
He's not booting a football. He's booting Alex Ferguson's
Yeah.
face at that point. And it's such an interesting subplot. But the story, the main story was, here was this guy who we'd all watched go through this, the broken kneecaps, the whatever it was that happened that night in Paris, all of those things. He'd won the World Cup. He'd almost got his redemption, and he just looked as though he was having the time of his life out there that night. And I must admit, coming out of this, I thought, who the hell can stop him?
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. How was he in La Liga, Adam, that season?
Ronaldo?
Yeah, because he's heavy. He's big.
He's cuddly.
He is. It's
For
difficult
a
to.
professional footballer, professional athlete, he's big.
He's carrying a little bit of holiday weight, I think, is
Yes.
the.
Yes, and you only need to look at him now to say he's actually looking quite svelte in 2003.
Some people have a big skeleton, but he gets 23 that year in La Liga, Martin, 6 in the Champions League and 1 in the World Club thing. But back then it was only 1 game, so 30 in total.
Yeah, those 3 seasons or so, the 3 full seasons at Madrid. No injuries, pretty much, and he scores a barrel of the goals. But I think it's maybe just how barren it had been since '99. When was it he went down? November '99, October '99. We were talking about he went down after 2.
I really don't. I think that there are the stages of his career. There's up to '98, then there's this lost period of '98 to 02, then 02 he wins the World Cup, which acts as redemption. And his time at Real, he just looked as though he was enjoying himself. And judging by his appearance,
not just on the pitch.
Not just.
I think he scored 2 goals in the Champions League before Old Trafford. That's what I mean. We just haven't discussed him. We don't discuss him a lot on this show.
He didn't need him, truthfully. They only signed him.
I'm just in general. Again, his success is Brazilian. And I'm not going to make equivalencies with Shearer, but it's the tragedy of that career because of the injuries that he should be picking up. Davies mentioned that this is now the pinnacle of the sport. That's why the show is called what it's called, and he's just not picking up, I guess, those medals. But Clive Tildesley and Big Raw and Adam at the end of this, because the final's at Old Trafford, basically just assuming the Harlem Globetrotters will be back in a couple of months at the final, because as Davey says, who's going to stop this?
Yeah, no, I know you wouldn't have, you certainly wouldn't have picked it. And again, I know, spoiler or whatever the opposite of a spoiler is, when you think about the final that ends up being there, I don't think either of those two would have stopped Madrid in this final. Ronaldo thing, I was thinking about this before we came on, because it is all about his early career. You think about what he did, what he could come on to be, and then this little bit of an Indian summer that he has. You think, all right, well, fair enough. But I don't know. Certainly for me, it was a bit of a well, the damage is done type thing. 2002 was great for the Brazil moment, but you can still get those moments. I think that a player can turn up at an international tournament and just do something. And
of course, and
2 or 3 weeks they're on it.
Yeah, the Champions League is the testing ground, but for him, I think personally, he needed that World Cup. He needed, because they should have won it.
Oh, for sure.
And he
hard reset,
And I just think that he kind of plays with. I've got this vision in my mind of him kind of 98 to 02, this grimace in an interkit, and then I've got him smiling away as with a sandwich in each hand as he skates through for a goal. What's interesting, by the way, about when I was just looking at the goal tallies, Raul gets 16 in the league that year in Spain, but he gets 9 in the Champions League, and it just the different Raul was so underrated for a guy everybody agrees is brilliant. His Champions League output was consistently remarkable.
And I think he probably helped Ronaldo. I mean, it's easy to say great players going to play for a team full of great players will become better, but it wasn't always the case at Madrid. But I think Ronaldo really needed someone to share the burden, I guess, mentally. He wasn't he had his difficulties there as well. I don't think his physical setup at that stage was really conducive to being the main man or being the battering ram that he was 4 or 5 years ago, or 4 or 5 years previous, sorry, I should say. So he probably needed that. He had to modify his game a little bit. That explosiveness was gone because he had half a knee left, I think, at this point. So he had to almost adapt. And I think it's weird because it's not. I never find myself saying he made himself into a better player, because he just didn't. Like he didn't, and
He
it wasn't even that he was. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even that he was like a. He was a different type of player, but he just wasn't as good, or he wasn't what I wanted him to be. But to then go to Madrid and have those 3 years and sort of show that it wasn't just all about the pace and power, and when that was gone, he was absolutely hopeless. I think there's that part of it. I don't think there's anything to do with like a rebirth or anything like that. I think it was just simply he's got that Indian summer there, 3 years, got the World Cup, got what he can do there, and that's fantastic. But he was never the same, and nowhere near different. Yeah.
If anyone younger ever asked me about original Ronaldo, I always say watch the compilation of his goals from 95, 96 at Barca.
Yeah. Barca,
because they are incredible. I just think this is a human story rather than a football story. It's a guy who could end his career with no regrets, without this huge thing hanging over him. And he maybe plays like that a little bit here, where he doesn't care as much as he's not got that mad. He's got what he's wanted. He's not got that mad desperation. And they didn't need him. They signed him because he was Ronaldo and he just won the World Cup and they were doing their Galacticos thing. They could have got any one of another 10 strikers in Europe and they would have contributed goal wise, but this was just that last magnificent performance. This was Sean Connery and the Untouchables. This was this late career snippet of the absolute genius that had lain at the heart of it. And as for United, again, Ferguson was bemoaning, they'd gone out early again. I just did not like the setup of the team. It was kind of unbalanced. Veron's in there, Van Nistelrooy scoring loads of goals. But, something that we talked about with Van Nistelrooy last week, that was he scored shitloads of goals for them. He scored shitloads of goals for Real Madrid, but neither of them won a Champions League in that period. And I wonder if the reason that we have this move to what you boys talked about there with the front threes and the different type of players is, could you be successful with that type where we've got this guy who scores all our goals and we're built for that? Or did you have to have many more arrows in the quiver?
I think that's it. But again, we'll get into that over the next few weeks. And United, they were flying. This is the thing. They were twatting teams about pretty easily. So I'm not entirely convinced it was the setup that was wrong. I think he lost the dressing room. He lost one player in the dressing room.
Very much.
Completely unnecessary. And I just don't think they were quite the same necessarily after that cup game against Arsenal. But who knows? Ronaldo would score the opening goal of the semi-final. Real Madrid would play Juventus, who'd scrapped their way there. So a great start, but what could possibly go wrong? There's a Milan derby as well before. Now, you've waited 27 episodes for it. The greatest championship.
No, you've waited 27 episodes for it.
All to come next week. Thank you, Davey.
I cannot wait.
Yes. Thanks, Adam.
Do you know, at least I'm going to get to talk about Ancelotti Milan 2003, that team, if not this specific game. So I'll do that very.
Do you actually need us next week, Martin, for the show, or
Listen, we'll save it for next week. In all seriousness, right? I mean, I do play up to the stick for.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, some of this is showbiz, right? But I will defend this final. 1991, it is not. Because 1991, Marseille were terrified of the greatest technical team in Europe, Red Star Belgrade. But Red Star Belgrade played in the Yugoslavian League, where if you drew, games went to penalties. They were playing fucking penalty shootouts all the time. They were winning all the time. They were like, we'll just win this. What's the point? And the ball, teams just didn't cross the halfway line, right? That, I promise you, did not happen in this game, and I will defend that to the hilt. It's not the greatest final of all time, but it's a hell of a lot better than it gets remembered for, because kids need goals and all that. But anyway, that's all to come next week. Until then, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.